Welcome to an EE Times podcast with TIRIAS Research. I'm Jim McGregor, one of the principal analysts. I'm joined today by Francis Sideco, one of the other principal analysts, and one of our junior analysts here, Caiden McGregor. We were all, along with Damian McGregor as well, all at CES, touring the booths, talking to people, attending the events. And this is kind of our recap because CES kind of sets a stage each year for the trends and things that we're going to see throughout the year. So, and it was a packed CES, it really was. And unfortunately, a lot of people also came down with the flu.
Damien being one of them. That's why he's
Damien
not
being one
here.
of them, and Caden also. But we're here to kind of fill you in on what we saw and what was going on. So let's start with Francis. Francis, what did you do at CES and what did you think of it? What did
So yeah, there were three kind of major areas that I saw. One of which was some unique user interfaces, HMIs that are starting to develop. We saw it a little bit last year too, but now they're starting to get more pronounced. And
really,
then
really based on AI, right?
Some of it is based on AI, but some of it is really just progressions on the AR glasses. For example, there were a number of AR glass manufacturers who are starting to try to get into either some form of optical see-through. So obviously we have video see-through in HMD type XR headsets. But and last year for the AR glasses, a lot of it was all audio and using the glasses to have hands-free connectivity to using Chat GPT, things like that, or making phone calls or listening to music. But this year we saw a handful of startups mostly starting to look at how you get optical see-through, not to the level that you have with video see-through as far as things that you can overlay on the glass, but at least some basic text for use in either a real-time translation or to help with in noisy environments where it's hard to hear and you can get basically your conversation captioned even if it's with multiple people. So there was that. There was a lot of auto stuff going on, and there's definitely AI happening there. And then the other one was really more about how we can start monetizing AI and what's the way to do that. So there's a few examples that we can go into that I thought were really starting to show how to make how to create value with all of the work that's been going on over the last couple of years around AI.
Caden, what about you? What did you see as, and you and your brother really got to do a lot of touring of the trade show floors, which Francis and I didn't get a chance to do, as well as attending the media events, PepCon, CS Unveiled, and Showstoppers. So you got to tell us really what were the trends and what was really cool.
Well, I think Francis made an excellent point about user interface having a massive importance here at CES. I think walking through some of the largest show floors at CES, I noticed a lot of trying to integrate AI and smart applications into a lot of everyday items. You had walkers, you had electronic um, rollerblades, you had just about everything you could. And I saw a lot of interesting startups, especially at Eureka Hall and at Showstoppers. So I think a lot of it is really that AI takeover of people just trying to make everything as user friendly as possible, as applicable as possible. And I think for a lot of it, we're just not quite there yet, but quite a few things did show a lot of promise. I think the AR glasses is looking very promising, although some companies probably rushed it a bit here at CES this year. Um, Other than that, I was just impressed by the sheer amount of creativity and ingenuity. The amount of new technology that people were putting out was very cool. One particular that impressed me quite a bit was there was a company that was measuring your hands movements based off of an electronic band that you would wear. and it was able to replicate the movements of your digits just through the magnetic signals in your arm without
Wow.
having to measure the electricity, which could shock you.
Wow, that's impressive. That is impressive. Yeah, I think this is also the second year we saw a company that's using earbuds for motion control and very slight adjustments. Francis, can you remember what the name
Yeah,
of the
it was Naki Logics, and
Nagi Logics? Very
yeah,
impressive.
and it was a lot more, and like you said, Jim, we saw them last year, and it was kind of their
Mhm.
first year that they came out. But even last year, just through either facial like ticks or or gulping or kind of clenching your teeth, raising your eyebrows, things like that, the earbud was able to pick up those things. And even last year, the founder was able to fly a full flight simulator just using that. And it was basically a mouse click, a mouse click equivalent with the way he would move very slightly. You could almost not even see the movement to move the mouse. He moved his head, and then he would do some kind of, like clenching of teeth or raising an eyebrow to click. This year, there was a big improvement to kind of their onboarding. Last year, it would take, he said, realistically about an hour for somebody to kind of pick it up and figure out how to get good at using it. But using AI, using some of the training and learning that they've learned over the last year, they've been able to actually reduce that down to about 15 minutes. So that's a big improvement. They're seeing a lot of traction with who they're talking to.
Well, I didn't get to see a lot of stuff because I was occupied by a few major events, but a few things I did notice, especially the evening media events, less industrial type applications, especially like at CES and Field. Pretty much everything was really focused this year, from what I saw, on consumer applications and, really getting consumer applications. And there were still the ones out there, and you can tell me if I'm right here, Caden, where you just kind of shake your head and say, why? But and some of the branding and marketing, man, some of these companies really, really need help, let me tell you. But beyond that, we did have some major announcements. I did attend the NVIDIA keynote where they introduced the latest Blackwell GPU architecture for consumer applications for the GPU cards for desktop and for mobile, as well as seeing some of those solutions throughout some of the booths like Asus, which had them throughout their booth. Um, they also introduced kind of a desktop mini DGX system called Digits, which I'm dying to get my hands on. It's only like 4x4, and talked about really where they're going with AI, which is a step beyond the agentic AI where everyone else is today, and that is really to the physical AI, and that's really the robotics and the autonomous machines, all the way up to humanoids. So that was impressive.
I think that's important to note though, Jim, because even now, agentic AI is still just kind of in its
Oh
infancy
yeah.
and starting where and NVIDIA is already talking about the next step past that, which is physical AI with robotics using agentic AI capability as their primary core. So yeah,
Well,
no, I
actually,
think
beyond that, I mean, it uses all the sensors. I mean, it uses definitely using multiple different types of models, agentic models, traditional models, all kinds of models, to be able to do that. And yeah, and I would agree, NVIDIA is just still so far ahead of everyone else in this. I mean, it's going to take years, I think, before all this develops. But, when they have their Isaac simulator, they have their NIM foundational models. They have their blueprints for combining these models into something, and being able to take this all the way up to physical AI, to autonomous machines. It was very impressive.
well, that's what you really need in that is that combination of models. And like you
Hmm.
said, it's not just a combination of generative AI and agentic models. It's traditional models too, because when you go to physical AI, you need all the CV models, you need all of those object classification models to be working in conjunction with all of the larger models as well.
Yeah. So the PC segment definitely got a boost out of this, and I'm still going through all the announcements from the
Yeah.
PC guys. Lenovo was showing off some very innovative displays. One was self-turning laptop monitor that actually follows you. Another one was what they called it a roll-up display, which actually was a flexible display that kind of folded down underneath your keyboard, but gave you a full, 8.5 by 11 sheet display or a very large display on mobile. There was, and a lot of announcements around PCs. Obviously, we had the GPUs from NVIDIA. We had new Arrow Lakes being talked about by Intel, and wait for it, the next generation Panther Lake. And why is Panther Lake so important? One, because it is kind of their next follow-on premier solution after Arrow Lake and Lunar Lake, but also because it's running on 18A. So it kind of shows that they are able to manufacture on their 18A process node, which leaps them back into a very competitive position as a semiconductor foundry. And not to be left out here, AMD announced a slew of new Ryzen processors for PCs too. So definitely the PC segment's getting a boost early this year from all these new technologies. I think though, 2025, we start to really see the edge AI take off. I didn't get to see a lot of stuff. I know that Caden, you went around Eureka Park and all this stuff, looking at how people are using AI, traditional AI and generative AI. But one of the demos I got to see was Synaptics, and Synaptics using their Astra product line, which is a very, very small processor and they're using it for AI processing and some of the demos that they were using in their suite, and it was impressive what they could do in terms of running a large language model, although technically it's probably a small language model, optimized large language model, to be able to do on device in just a very small form factor, being able to have like a manual to understand how to use something, or, a digital assistant to understand how to use something, not to mention to actually use it. So where you could talk to a washing machine or a dishwasher and say, hey, wash it on this cycle, this, and this, and it would do it. So very, very impressive. And I think that, we're getting to that point with the evolution of the models and the evolution of the technology to really have that edge AI on device experience. And I think that's going to be important going through 2025.
Yeah, around Edge AI, Caden, do you want to tell them about that home security drone that we saw? Because I thought that was really interesting, and this is actually one of the ways that we saw people are starting to use AI to start trying to monetize, as they develop solutions for consumers. So, Caden, do you want to tell them about that?
Sure thing. We saw from alarm.com that they were now using drones as part of their home defense systems, where you could purchase a drone that was not too large, probably what, 8 by 12.
Yeah, it
And
was probably the size like of a pizza pie, like
yeah,
a 12-inch, 14
and
inch.
it
Yeah.
it would be stored on your property in a weatherproof box that whenever your system detected an intruder somewhere on your property, it would be released and it would fly to the intruder. It would follow them. It could descend upon them without them noticing because it was quiet and small. Most people don't look up, right? Then it would have a camera and a microphone and a spotlight to be able to chase off intruders by shining lights on them, by shouting at them, by alerting them the police was coming, and was able to remember their physical characteristics to be able to provide to law enforcement. And this was big for them because this was allowing them to expand from just defending your walls and your doors and your windows to be able to protect your yards and your garages and your entire property line, which was really impressive. And it
Yeah,
was
I
all
mean,
Can you arm it?
Well, I think the most you could do is it had a pretty loud speaker and a klaxon, I think,
Oh, really?
and you could do that. And the idea was extending out your security perimeter because you could do a lot of that stuff with some of the lights that you have around your house, but it won't by that point they're already at your house or have broken in, right?
I'm thinking just put a red laser, dot laser. That
Right
enough
in the
should be enough to
back.
scare people
Yeah,
off.
there's probably some litigation issues that you have to
Yeah.
deal with that. But the point is to Caden's point is extended the barrier. And in a lot of places like here in Las Vegas, the metro will not come out unless you have a visual authentication of something happening. So the fact that you're able to get the video of an intruder further out, it gives them more time. It gives time to go ahead and call law enforcement and give them time to come to get to the house, hopefully before the actual break-in happens, or potentially even scare the intruder away before they even try anything, which would be the ideal situation.
So what was the range of the drone?
I thought it was hundreds of meters, but don't
Okay.
don't quote me on that. I thought it was like
Well,
about 300 meters or
the
so.
reason I bring it up is one of the coolest things I saw, and this is the second year this company's been out. It's called Morse Micro out of Sydney, Australia.
Yeah.
They're using kind of an older Wi-Fi standard for long-range Wi-Fi. It's using a lower frequency range to get longer range, obviously lower data rates. I think it's in the 40 megabits per second type range. But the fact is, you can go over thousands of meters. So the fact is, and for somebody that has a very large property up here, you could actually extend your Wi-Fi out. Now, that might be good for communications. It might be good for security systems rather than having these proprietary line of sight solutions that you typically have to have today to extend over a long range. So this is going to be interesting. It's a product actually I'm going to be testing out over the next couple of weeks. But it is interesting to see, the sensor technology, the wireless communication, the wireless technology, the AI, as well as all the new silicon solutions kind of come together to really enable, new products. Now, I do worry, actually, especially going through CES Unveiled and seeing all the digital healthcare and health solutions and everything else that we're heading towards a Wall-E situation where humans don't have to do anything, even move their body. But which kind of led me to that whole, why do we need this? But I do think that it is going to definitely improve our lives, some of the technologies that we're using and developing.
Yeah, I mean, and just kind of closing out the edge AI bit. I mean, definitely that's getting pushed out. You mentioned Synaptics, but Qualcomm had a huge announcement around their Qualcomm Aware platform, which they announced 2 years ago at Mobile World Congress. And it's definitely about enabling the IoT, embedded segment to take advantage of higher capable processing capabilities, including some of the AI capabilities that Qualcomm has been really pushing on the edge, and making it as easy as possible, even for a fragmented, you know, vertical light or fragmented use case like IoT to take advantage of these capabilities.
So, Kaden, this was your first CES. You've been wanting to go there your entire life.
Yep.
And you're a software engineer, so I know that you were geeking out like nobody's business. What'd you think of CES?
It was incredible. It was unbelievably massive. Just being in the show floors and seeing thousands and thousands of booths and tens of thousands of people was shocking. But it was amazing to see all the new technology. I loved seeing the AR glasses. I was excited to see all of the new EEG technology being used, especially for controlling prosthetics. And I thought it was really fun. I thought it was really fun, especially even for the press conferences with companies like Zeekr and AMD. So I thought it was a great time, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, actually, I should have mentioned that. You got to attend all the press conferences. Well,
I
Francis
did.
and I were at a company event. Um, so best in show, whether it's a technology, whether it's a application, whether it's a company, whether it's a product. Caden, what's your best in show?
That's really hard to say, but I think Nvidia made one heck of a splash this year at CES, and I was lucky enough to spend quite a bit of time interviewing them on their new DLSS software, and I think that was really really cool and really interesting for me personally.
Okay. Francis, best in
Yeah.
show.
I don't know that I would call it best in show, but I was impressed with a couple of companies who I thought were good examples of how.
Nope, you only get one.
Well, we gotta cover still, how people are making money with AI before maybe we get to best in show. But and I'll get there. But I did want to mention because I think it's important, especially as we set the stage for 2025. I think this is the year where we're going to see that next wave of value creation. You're going to have NVIDIA and all of the large Uber kind of scale AI model manufacturers and developers going to continue that path, right? And we're going to keep pushing that road. But I think the next wave of value creation for AI is about small language models or very fine-tuned models that enterprises using their own data are going to start using to generate value one way or the other, whether it's from productivity internally with their internal tools or externally going to other to consumers and their end users. So I think two examples of that actually is IBM had announced they announced it actually last November, but they since UFC, for example, is here in Las Vegas, they have a partnership with UFC for an insights engine, definitely generative AI based, um, for to increase audience engagement, not just pre-fight but live during the fight with analysis and insights of, for example, during the fight, hey, this fighter is using their left hand more, and when they do that, they're able to get X number of knockouts versus when they use their right hand. Insights like that live during the fight. And I think what was most.
And for those that don't know, UFC is Ultimate Fighting Championship. So
Yeah, it's the premier MMA mixed martial arts, sport. But IBM actually has similar partnerships with other major sports events like the U.S. Open, and also the Masters and so forth, where they're doing a lot of this stuff. And I think, obviously the companies are monetizing this through increased engagement with their audiences. But in the case of UFC, for example, they're even looking at potentially using this for the fighters to help with their training, which I think is very critical. And then the other one from an internal standpoint, but also external, is a company called Driver, actually, where they're using generative AI to help companies with their documentation. Especially when we were talking about embedded applications, Jim, around IoT and MCUs. If you've ever been an embedded engineer, a lot of times it's so difficult to follow like MCU documentation. If you want to do something specific with that MCU, for example, sometimes you're having to leaf through 1,000-page user guides that might or might not be updated, and you end up at a place where you think you want to go. And then you can't do it. You call their support line. They're like, "Oh, that documentation's out of date, or it's wrong, or we didn't update it, or whatnot."
now
So
you just have an agent to do it, to
yeah.
ask.
So
Yeah.
so Driver actually has a platform where companies can bring in all of their documentation and have create a platform for the users to be able to get at these, not just get at the information that they need more quickly, but even for the people that are creating the documentation to make sure that all of the documentation and everything that's behind, like, for example, if you update it in one area, oftentimes you have application notes or other documentation that is driven by that initial update. Those get updated in real time as well. So I thought that was an interesting example again of using existing models, and it doesn't have to be these Uber models out there, um, to develop to deliver real value. And the key to all of this that I've found, Jim, is your data as an enterprise needs to be in a state where the AI can use it. And I think that's where a lot of companies are stumbling right now. They go through a POC, they're able to do a smaller subset of their data, get it in a state where AI can use it. But then once they go to try to scale up to company wide, that's where the stumbling block is. So I
So,
found
so,
certain companies are helping with that, like IBM.
your best in show is AI value.
I think and the best example I could find like that, frankly, so far was IBM with their ability to help. I've always called them the easy button for enterprise AI, and that was actually proven out with their UFC partnership because this isn't the first time UFC. Tried an insights engine. But the proof point that they gave us, and this is from UFC, not IBM, is that they got to a point to the same point with IBM after a month of working with them and ingesting data and so forth that took them up to 2 years in previous tries to get to. So they're really excited about the potential to do even more with these kinds of insights engines.
I would agree with you. IBM obviously is creating these granite models that enterprises can just take, and NVIDIA is kind of a broader scope in terms of all kinds of different AI models through their NIMs and blueprints to combine these models.
Yeah.
So definitely some of the leaders in the industry are definitely focused on making AI more user friendly. So it'll be interesting. Mine, best in show, if you really want to know. Humanoid robots. I mean, what's not cool about a robot? Come on. I mean, and I have to be honest, there were some demos there that were seriously cool. I was impressed at having robots come up and shake my hand and be able to do flips and sit down and just do basic tasks. It's impressive what they're doing with robotics. I think that robots have been around for a long time, in very niche cases, especially because you had to program them. Now we finally have AI, so we can train them through real world scenarios or even using virtual scenarios. Um, we've got much improved technology from the sensors, the communications, the processing, all these solutions. I think we're finally to a point where we're moving into, I think we are moving into that physical AI era, and robotics becomes a key area going forward
Yeah, there's
for
actually I
everything. Oh,
forgot.
and I shouldn't say just robotics, I should say autonomous machines.
Yeah. Well, autonomous machines, but I think you're right when you said humanoid, because obviously we've had robots like right on assembly lines and stuff like that, which is basically just an arm doing their thing. But now you've got the human factor, humanoid robots. I don't remember the name of the startup, but they've been featured a lot in a lot of YouTube
Hmm.
videos coming out of CES because they had a lifelike human robot using generative AI, but also
There are
using all
so
the
many
sensors.
companies out there, from the
Yeah,
traditional guys like Honda and Boston Dynamics. No,
Boston
Boston.
Dynamics. Yeah,
Yeah, and it is incredible too, some of the startups that are doing stuff and just incredible stuff. I almost see that robotics is getting to the point where AI was a couple years ago, where everyone's kind of now, or the average user can now get to a point to understand, use, and develop robotics.
yeah, absolutely.
And Caden, this is one of your areas of focus, so interested in that?
Absolutely. Having humanoid robotics is incredible, and the integration of it with AI in the future will absolutely change the way that we interact with the world and with each and every job that we do. Um, but again, right now it's still that emergent technology. We're still watching it grow, and it's going to take a few more years before it really breaks out into the mainstream.
Yeah. Well, and like everything else, Once you have a key technology that is viable, it still takes a couple years for the ecosystem to build up around it and the business models to actually make it cost effective. So, but I think we're on that cusp. Finally, I think we're on that cusp to where robots become a part of an everyday thing. Whether they're being used in a manufacturing environment, a retail environment, a healthcare environment, or a home environment. I think we're getting to the point where they may help us solve some of the labor shortage issues that we're having around the world. So, okay. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. And thank everyone else for joining us on this podcast. Just a note, there's a couple of other key large events coming up that we're going to be covering, including Mobile World Congress, Embedded World, GTC, you name it, throughout 2025. And it's going to be an exciting year. So look for more from Tirias Research on EE Times, both through our articles and through the podcast. Thank you very much.